I want to thank the Excellencies and all the President to us actually doing that. So thank you, sirs. In Nigeria, we are implementing the development of special agro-industrial processing zones in 8 states and the Federal Capital Territory. We have mobilized $2.9 billion to support the establishment of these zones in 28 more states of Nigeria. Your Excellencies, we stood by countries when it mattered the most. The countries that were under sanctions to clear their debt arrears to the bank, including Somalia and Sudan, and all of my shareholders are here, and they have been exemplary in understanding and supporting us through that. And today, thanks to their support and the support from the African Development Fund, Somalia is showing tremendous recovery and resilience. Excellencies, thanks to the African Development Fund and the bank's Technology for African Agricultural Transformation, which we call TAT, Sudan, even in the midst of the conflict, is showing remarkable progress towards achieving self-sufficiency in wheat. With our support, it achieves 50% self-sufficiency in wheat in 2023 and 85% by 2024. We are also standing with Zimbabwe to clear its arrears to the bank and other creditors. As champion of the debt arrears clearance process, working with His Excellency former President Chisano, who is here with us, we have supported Zimbabwe and they are making significant progress. I am pleased that the International Monetary Fund's staff monitor program will soon be concluded. And yesterday we were there. It was such an emotive time to see how far we have come. There's hope ahead. The past 10 years were filled with never before seen multiple and simultaneous crises. The COVID-19 to geopolitical tensions emanating from the Russian war in Ukraine, which in turn triggered a global food crisis. At the same time, a global debt crisis and devastating climate change posed untold hardships and challenges. In the midst of this polycrisis, your bank, the African Development Bank Group, strongly supported by its shareholders, stood strong and innovatively supported Africa as it navigated each crisis. Africa survived. Africa was resilient. Africa grew out of them all, and Africa is still standing and standing tall. Thanks for your support. We stood up for Africa when it mattered the most, the COVID-19 crisis. Africa, the continent with the least room to maneuver, was effectively left alone in the midst of the most challenging global crisis it had ever faced in decades. No vaccines, no medicines, no oxygen, no masks, no gloves. As developed countries got second and third COVID-19 booster shots, vaccines, Africa was scrambling for just one shot for its population. With the support of our shareholders, the African Development Bank swung into bold action and launched a $3 billion social bond, the largest ever in world history at that time. To support Africa, we set up a crisis response facility for up to $10 billion for counter-cyclical support for our countries. Walking away from home, my exemplary staff and board of directors, we worked hard and we delivered more for Africa even in the midst of all of that. Today, the African Development Bank Group, Your Excellencies, is implementing a $3 billion program for quality health infrastructure. A $3 billion program again for the development of local pharmaceutical manufacturing capacity in Africa. We created new institutions, such as the African Pharmaceutical Technology Foundation, to enable Africa to gain access to intellectual property rights and to protected technologies and processes for manufacturing vaccines and medicines. We strongly supported African agriculture, and in the process increased Africa's capacity to feed itself. Your Excellencies, in 10 years, our work allowed 104 million Africans to achieve food security and provided 13 million farmers with access to improved agricultural technologies. I see the impact of our work in supporting Africa to avoid a looming food crisis predicted when the war of Russia in Ukraine broke out. The news headlines were awash with predictions of a food crisis in Africa, as the continent stood to lose 30 million tons of food, wheat, maize, and oilseeds imported from Russia and Ukraine. The African Development Bank Group swung into immediate action with a $1.5 billion emergency food production facility. Our Feed Africa plan worked. In just 2 years, Your Excellencies, our work had allowed 14 million farmers across 30 countries to have access to improved seeds and fertilizers. They produced 44 million metric tons of food. That is 14 million metric tons of food than what we were losing from Russia and Ukraine. That's 116% above the target that we set. And the total value of the food, $17.3 billion US. Thanks to the bank's support, Ethiopia increased its agricultural areas, producing heat-tolerant wheat varieties, which grew from 5,000 hectares when we started there in 2018 to over 650,000 hectares by 2023. Today, Ethiopia is self-sufficient in wheat, and in less than 4 years, Ethiopia has become a net exporter of wheat. The landmark Feed Africa Summit, which was held in Dakar, then under President Macky Sall, brought together over 30 heads of state and government who signed the Food and Agricultural Delivery Compacts to accelerate food production and food sovereignty in their countries, which was approved unanimously then by the African Union. We mobilized $72 billion globally for Africa's food security, working with our partners. The inspiration of the Feed Africa Summit informed our next bold action to achieve universal access to electricity in Africa. To fast-track access to electricity, the African Development Bank and the World Bank, myself and the president of the World Bank, Ajay Banga, we jointly launched what's called the Mission 300 in Dar es Salaam to connect 300 million people in Africa to electricity by 2030. At the Africa Energy Summit in January of this year, we organized, hosted, and co-chaired, along with Our Excellency, President Samia Suluhu Hassan, a historic gathering of over 48 African countries, where leaders unanimously endorsed the Dakar-Dar es Salaam Declaration on Energy Access with the full support of the African Union. Your Excellencies, the declaration marks an unprecedented continental commitment to accelerate energy access through coordinated national actions, regional interconnections, and enhanced investment in renewables and grid expansion. I'm pleased to say, Your Excellencies, that we mobilize $55 billion in support of these national energy compacts. Also, we advanced on providing universal access to clean cooking for women in Africa with a successful African Clean Cooking Summit held in Paris, again co-chaired by our dynamic president, Madam Samia Suluhu Hassan, and we mobilized $4 billion for clean cooking. I mean, why is it everybody in the world cooks with gas and nobody dies? Why is it that African women are collecting firewood and charcoal and dung to cook? It doesn't make any sense. And by the grace of God, we started dealing with that particular issue. We must be able to have our women cook and cook with pride like anybody else in the world. The African Development Bank launched what's called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, AGIA, supported by the G7, to mobilize $10 billion for climate-resilient infrastructure all across Africa. We strongly supported the youth and the women. The bank's Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, AFAWA, approved $2.5 billion in support of over 24,000, in fact it's $2.9 billion, in support of over 24,000 women-owned businesses all across Africa, expanding access of women businesses to finance through 185 financial institutions in 44 countries. And Excellencies, our women in Africa, I've never seen a bird that flies with two wings. Every bird has two wings. We have to make sure that women in Africa have access to finance, period. In support of the youth and to help unleash their potential, the bank launched what's called the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, which will expand access to finance to create youth-based wealth all across Africa. We expanded the voice and participation of civil society. I was with them yesterday. Across all of the bank's projects, we instituted a civil society forum each year to interact, to engage more transparently. Today, rather than being adversaries, we are strategic partners. We significantly strengthened the financial architecture in Africa, thanks to our African Development Fund donors. We raised $8.9 billion for African Development Fund's 16th replenishment. And that is the largest ever in the history of the fund since its establishment in 1973. We innovated and developed a new financial framework that will allow the African Development Fund to mobilize $27 billion from the global capital markets. It's my time here to actually ask that we please thank all of our donors to the African Development Fund, because without that, we'll not be able to support in all of these 37 countries. Thank you. The shareholders of the bank showed extraordinary support and confidence in our leadership and management of the bank. When I was first elected president in 2015, the capital of the bank stood at $93 billion. From 2015 to 2025, with the support of our shareholders, we grew the bank's capital from $93 billion to $318 billion. Thank you. We put that expanded capital into remarkable use with unprecedented financial support to all of our African countries. Let me explain for perspectives. Since the establishment of the African Development Bank in 1964 until 2014, its total approvals were $118 billion. However, in the past 10 years alone, under my presidency with our boards of directors and my staff, our total approvals were $102 billion. That represents 46% of all the approvals in the history of the African Development Bank Group. We have also ramped up our disbursements. The total disbursements of the bank group in the last 10 years alone at $59 billion represents almost half of all the disbursements in the history of the African Development Bank Group. These are not just numbers. Thanks to your collective support, this represents a new dynamism, a scale of transformative impact of the African Development Bank Group that at any point in its history, we provided significant financial support to African financial institutions, from commercial banks to regional development finance institutions to multilateral development finance institutions, boosting their capital bases. Under my presidency, with our board of directors and my staff, we set up and built Africa 50 from scratch to what it is today, for which I'm extremely proud. A first-rate private equity infrastructure investment platform with portfolio companies now worth over $7 billion. We work very closely and strongly and supported the African Union. This includes a provision of about $12 million in institutional support, over $17 million to the African Continental Free Trade Area, and over $27 million to the African Center for Disease Control. The African Investment Forum, launched by the bank and its partners in 2018, has since mobilized $225 billion in investment interest in Africa across several projects. Excellencies, the African Development Bank has strongly supported several African countries in tackling the effects of climate change. The African Adaptation Acceleration Program, which we call AAAP, is financing commitments of $25 billion from the bank and in partnership with the Global Center for Adaptation. And I'm glad to say, Your Excellencies, today it is the largest climate adaptation program in the world. Over the past 10 years, Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank Group has become a global leader in financial innovations that have enabled us to stretch our balance sheets and deliver exceptional impact. The bank led with the use of synthetic securitization in 2015, becoming the first multilateral development bank in the world to do so. The African Development Bank also launched a $750 million hybrid capital in the global capital market in 2024, becoming also the first multilateral financial institution in the world to do so, opening up a new asset class for investors globally. The African Development Bank, your bank, spearheaded, together with the Inter-American Development Bank, the framework to allow the rechanneling of the IMF special drawing rights, SDRs, to multilateral development banks, which we can leverage by 4 to 8 times to provide much needed financial concessional financing at scale. Excellencies, the image, the respect, and global confidence in the bank have soared through our active and unprecedented participation in the summit meetings of the G7 and G20. With your backing, as President, along with my colleagues and our board of directors, we have amplified the voice and the needs of Africa at the highest levels globally. As my mandate that you have given me as President of the bank draws to a close, I am extremely proud of the work that we have done and the incredible impact of the bank has had on the daily lives of millions of Africans. This has been a collaborative effort that we all can take pride in. We maintained the stellar AAA credit ratings of the bank for 10 years under very difficult circumstances with your support, with all the 3 global credit rating agencies, from Fitch to Moody's to Standard & Poor's, even in the most difficult times of COVID. And I want to thank all my governors. I knew how many calls I made. I knew how many doors I locked. I knew how many conversations I had. But I knew how much your heart was with us that helped us to survive and to continue to sail despite all the challenges. To you, our governors and countries, I say thank you. Thank you so very much. It was not an easy thing, but I'm extremely grateful to you. Your Excellencies, the independent review of the governance systems of the African Development Bank by our governors asked for in 2020 was completed about 2 months ago. The review showed that the African Development Bank is very well governed, respects the independence of its oversight organs, and is at par with all of its peers globally. In view of all that transpired in 2020, I feel vindicated and enormously happy. I am exceptionally proud of the African Development Group that I lead. We developed a new institution, the African Financial Stability Mechanism, unanimously approved by the African Union to support Africa to refinance its debt on global capital markets, reduce contagion effects of economic shocks, and be the Africa's first financial safety net. The African Development Bank, your bank, is today globally recognized and respected. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank was ranked as the best multilateral financial institution in the world by Global Finance. Your bank, the African Development Bank, was ranked for 2 consecutive years the most transparent financial institution globally by Public Watch Fund for our sovereign operations, scoring last year 98.8% on the Transparency Index, the highest ever in the history of the Global Transparency Index. And in 2024, the bank achieved its highest income ever in its 60-year history. The African Development Fund, the concessionary financing institution of the bank, ranked 2nd best in the world and higher than all 55 bilateral financing organizations in all developed countries of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. As I complete my 2 5-year terms as president of the African Development Bank, I am proud of the legacy we are leaving behind, and I say we, it's a collective effort, for my successor, for the bank, and for Africa. We have built a world-class financial institution that will continue to advance Africa's position within a rapidly changing global development and geopolitical environment. I did not walk alone. I walked with an exemplary group of people at different points during my past 10 years. I am thankful for the exemplary support of the boards of directors over the past 10 years, for your strong support, for your strong oversight over our work and operations. And I'd like my board that currently are here today to please stand and be recognized. It's my time to recognize my board of directors. Wherever you are, please stand and be recognized, and I appreciate it. Thank you. They're a very tough board, but we get things done. I am very thankful to you, our board of governors. You have been simply incredible, and you have given us exceptional shareholder support. You were there for us, and you were there with us in the up times. You were there with us in the down times. You never doubted us. I'm indebted to you for your support. To our host country, thank you very much for your incredible hospitality. My special thanks and gratitude goes again to my senior brother, President Alassane Ouattara. Who steadfastly thank you. Who steadfastly stood by me, counseled me, supported me throughout my 10 years here as head of the bank. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, I consider myself Ivorian. I lived here for 15 years before being elected president of the bank. I spent 5 years in Bouaké. I was principal economist for the Rice Development Association in Africa. I was in Korogo, Man, Ojene, Galoa, Daloa. I supervised 10 Ivorian students at the center, and 9 of them had excellent with the congratulations of the examination panel. So, apart from Nigeria, my country of birth, this is the country in which I have spent most of my life, so I consider myself Ivorian. Thank you, my dear brother, Mr. President. You were there. You supported me each time. Grace, could you please stand up? Let us celebrate our president. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the government and people of Côte d'Ivoire as well.
Now, under me, they approved my vision and our vision to build a new world-class headquarters for the African Development Bank right here in Abidjan.
This will be the headquarters of the bank, the new headquarters of the bank.
Sky, it will send out a powerful signal for la Côte d'Ivoire, la banque.
For Côte d'Ivoire, the African Development Bank is here to stay. We are here to stay.
But please, no person is perfect, and no person is infallible. I have given my very best and made my own mistakes, all with good intentions. If in the course of my passionate and relentless drive to accelerate the agenda of Africa, I have offended some in word or in deed, through acts of commission or acts of omission, Please know that it was never personal. Where applicable, I ask for your forgiveness. To close, I would like to express my deepest appreciation to my staff. Please, I want all my staff to stand, if you're here. For your dedication, for your hard work, for your diligence, for your commitment, for your dependability. From literally sleepless nights on missions, at global events, on project and country visits, you put up with my habit of working late. I never sleep. They know I never sleep. C'est pas un président qui dort, you dors pas.
I'm not a president who sleeps. I don't sleep.
Sometimes in the early hours of the morning, you show remarkable resilience, but today I must owe you an apology. I apologize for denying you sleep. You, my staff, are the ones that I will miss the most. You are simply amazing. You work extremely hard, and you delivered big for Africa. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your selfless work and loyal support. We have come a long way, and we did it all for Africa. Here is a high five to all of you, and keep the faith. And to my darling wife, Grace, I am deeply grateful for your being my rock. You prayed for me. You encouraged me. You inspired me. You sacrificed for me. You stayed unshakable by my side at all times. We weathered some heavy storms together, but God was with us. You always reminded me of the God who was with me on the mountaintop is also the one with me in the valley. Today, together, we made it to the mountaintops, we went through the valleys and the waters, and by the grace of God, we did not drown. Thank you very much, my love. Together, we gave African Development Bank and Africa our all. I'm very grateful to you, and I'm glad the best decision I ever made in my life was to marry you. I honestly gave Africa my heart, my mind, and my all. I fought for what I believe were in Africa's best interests. Every single day and every turn in my 10 years as president. I will continue to serve Africa today and well into the future by God's grace. I am thoroughly convinced that God did not make a mistake in creating me as an African. I took my oath of office for a second time on September 1st, 2020. I made a simple prayer. God, as I start my second time as president of the African Development Bank and humble myself before you, I ask that you give me wisdom and that Africa will shine and prosper. Together with all of our shareholders, help us to make Africa shine. That is because I know that without God, I am absolutely nothing. For all we have achieved, I owe to God's infinite mercies and grace. So now unto God, the Almighty God, who held us up and blessed the works of all of our hands at the African Development Bank over the last 10 years. To him be all praise and glory forever. May God bless the African Development Bank. May God bless the African Development Fund. May God bless the Nigerian Trust Fund that together make up the African Development Bank. May God bless the boards of directors, past and present. May God bless the boards of governors, past and present. May God bless the amazing staff of the bank, past and present. My hardworking and innovative senior management teams, and of course the incredible members of the Staff Council, past and present. May God comfort the families of some of my staff that I lost along the way over the past 10 years, especially during COVID. I will carry with me the precious memories of your service to the bank. I only wish you are here today. May God send rains of blessings on every one of the bank's 81 shareholder countries to continue to support Africa. And now, to my own beloved country, Nigeria, and the presidents who nominated and supported me for election twice as president, I owe my deepest appreciation and gratitude. To President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who nominated me for my first term, and to President Muhammadu Buhari, who carried it forward and backed my election and stood stoically behind me during the challenging times and supported my re-election for second time. Thank you, sirs, most sincerely. My immense appreciation and gratitude also go to Nigeria's former presidents and heads of state, President Olusegun Obasanjo, General Abdulsalam Abubakar, General Yakubu Gowon, General Ibrahim Babangida, former vice presidents of Nigeria, Namadi Sambo, Atiku Abubakar, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the former governor of my state, Ibikunle Amosun, who helped me at various times. They all played major roles in supporting me. And of course, my dear sister, an amazing woman, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She was then the Minister of Finance of Nigeria, and she was my indefatigable campaigner-in-chief in 2015. To President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, my president, and the Vice President Kashim Shettima, for your support over the past 2 years, I am profoundly very grateful. Thank you for graciously approving the replenishment of the Nigerian Trust Fund for another 15 years. I understand will be about $500 million. May God bless you, all of our heads of state and government in Africa, for your incredible kindness, support for me and my colleagues over the past decade. May God bless the African Union and all the regional economic communities, the private sector, the civil society, the youth and the women of Africa, the multilateral and bilateral institutions, the partner institutions, the media organizations who supported us along the way. Together, we collectively join hands around the baobab tree of Africa's challenges and opportunities. Thank you for believing in Africa. May Africa always thrive and shine. And may our light never grow dim. God bless you all. Merci beaucoup.
You may be seated. Thank you, Mr. President, for such a heartwarming and motivating speech that I'm sure has energized those who are contending to be president of the bank. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the video of the host country.
La Côte d'Ivoire avance, et l'avance vite, portée par une vision claire, celle d'un développement durable, inclusif et résolument tourné vers l'avenir. cœur de cette dynamique, le plan national de développement 2021-2025 avec pour objectif l'amélioration concrète du bien-être des populations à travers un développement socio-économique ambitieux. Et les résultats parlent d'eux-mêmes. L'économie ivoirienne est en pleine expansion. Aujourd'hui, 9e puissance économique d'Afrique, la Côte d'Ivoire attire de plus en plus d'investisseurs. Le taux d'investissement a quasiment doublé, passant de 14,1% en 2011 à plus de 26,2% en 2024. L'agriculture reste le pilier de cette croissance. Premier producteur mondial de cacao et de noix de cajou, premier en Afrique pour le caoutchouc naturel et deuxième pour l'huile de palme. À cela s'ajoute une amélioration continue des infrastructures qui renforce la compétitivité du pays. Le développement économique permet de financer des infrastructures de qualité. Depuis quelques années, ce sont plus de 1600 km de routes interurbaines, 400 km d'autoroutes, 57 ponts et échangeurs qui ont été construits. Dans le domaine de l'énergie, le taux d'électrification est passé de 33% en 2011 à plus de 94% en fin 2024. Un progrès spectaculaire qui transforme le quotidien des Ivoiriens. L'éducation est aussi une priorité. L'enseignement supérieur progresse avec des institutions de référence comme l'Institut national polytechnique Félix Houphouët-Boigny, aujourd'hui classé 2e meilleure université d'Afrique francophone. Côté santé, les avancées sont tout aussi notables. Aujourd'hui, 80% des Ivoiriens vivent à moins de 5 km d'un centre de santé. Un accès facilité qui permet aux populations de mieux se soigner et de mieux vivre. Dans un contexte régional complexe, la Côte d'Ivoire a renforcé sa sécurité. L'indice de sécurité est passé de 4 en 2011 à 1,2 en 2024. Face à ces enjeux de développement, la Côte d'Ivoire a pu compter sur un partenaire stratégique de longue date, le groupe de la Banque africaine de développement. Institution panafricaine dont le siège est établi dans le pays même, à Abidjan, la BAD joue un rôle crucial dans l'accompagnement des ambitions du pays depuis 1971. Plus de 5 milliards de dollars ont été investis dans 110 projets nationaux. Dans cette optique, le soutien du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement est particulièrement significatif. L'institution accompagne notamment la transformation agricole par un apport financier à 8 agropoles sur les 9 que compte le pays. L'agropole du Bélier à Yamoussoukro en est un exemple concret. Et dans le nord, où l'agriculture représente 65% de l'économie locale, les chantiers sont déjà lancés. Aussi, l'appui de la BAD dans l'extension de la centrale électrique de Cyprel a permis une production supplémentaire de 800 GWh par an, assez pour alimenter plus de 247 000 foyers. Avec cette dynamique, désormais la Côte d'Ivoire exporte de l'électricité vers ses voisins, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Mali, consolidant sa position régionale. Et à Abidjan, le projet de transport urbain lancé en 2018 transforme la mobilité. Des projets d'envergure comme le 4e pont et la rocade Y4 qui ont désenclavé des zones importantes de la capitale ont été rendus possibles grâce au soutien du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, un partenaire engagé dans l'amélioration de la qualité de vie des Ivoiriens depuis des décennies. La Côte d'Ivoire est aujourd'hui un pays d'opportunités. Un pays où la croissance économique va de pair avec le progrès social. Un pays qui mise sur l'humain, l'innovation et la stabilité.
Let's put your hands together once more for Côte d'Ivoire that has done so well. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, may we please rise to welcome His Excellency Mr. Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, to deliver his opening address.
I thank you. Could you please take your seats now? And will you please rise and give a clean a round of applause? Bravo, Akin. Bravo to you.
Bravo, bravo, bravo. Merci à tous.
Thank you all. Thank you for your brilliant speech and for your words of thanks to all of us. Your Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros, my dear brother and friend, Your Excellency Mr. John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, my young brother, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, twin brothers. And I affectuously call John Mahama, I call him John the First. Do you know why? Because John the First it's John the Third. The first was Rolling, the second was Kufo, and John the Third was John Atamils, and then now we have John Dramani, John the Fourth. Your Excellency Joachim Chissano, former President of the Republic of Mozambique, Your Excellency Vice Presidents, Prime Ministers, and heads of governments representing heads of states of brotherly countries, Mr. Prime Minister of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, head of government, the heads of the national institutions, Madam Nyale Kaba, Ministry of the Economy, the Planning and Development of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, and chairperson of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank Group, and not the World Bank. You know, it is a continental bank. It is our World Bank, so to speak. Mr. President of the African Development Bank Group, my dear friend and brother Akin, honorable ministers, distinguished governors for the African Development Bank Group, Your Excellencies, heads of international organizations and development partners, distinguished representatives of international organizations, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished representatives of the senior management of the African Development Bank, distinguished representatives of the private sector, and there are many here, and civil society organizations as well, distinguished members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Akwaba to you all. Welcome to the 2025 annual meetings of the African Development Bank Group, which are holding here in Abidjan, our beautiful capital city, from the 26th to the 30th of May 2025. Let me start by reiterating to my friends, my brothers and heads of state, my warm thanks for being present here in Abidjan, particularly my brother Azali. It is not a short trip at all. I am grateful that you took the time to come and support us, as well as my brother Chissano. I know that as for Mahama, he is at home here in Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you for being here, my dear brothers. I would also like to hail the presence of the vice presidents, prime ministers, head of government, senior representatives of member states and of officials of partner institutions and private sector actors. My special congratulations go to Minister Nyale Kaba. Nyale, could you please rise? Thank you. You are the governor for the African Development Bank Group. I thank you for the excellent cooperation between the ADB and Côte d'Ivoire and for the successful organization of these annual meetings. Akin mentioned what has been done for our country, but I don't just want to simply congratulate him. I want to say that with Nyale Kaba, you were a very good couple. You were a strong team, you know. And Grace is my sister and friend, and she understands what I'm trying to say. Let me also congratulate Akin for his commitment to the development of our continent. All what you showed here speaks for itself and shows to what extent you have revitalized the bank. And I want to say congratulations once again, my friend and dear brother. Under your stewardship, the ADB recorded exceptional performances under the high fives, as you said, namely Light Up and Power Africa, Feed Africa, Industrialize Africa, Integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life for Africans.
Despite the challenges that the continent has had to face in the recent past, we can certainly say that the situation would have been much worse without the contribution of the African Development Bank, for which we thank you. Your integrated approach has made it possible to focus the bank's intervention on essential levers for sustainable and inclusive growth. And I would like to thank all participants to these annual meetings, be they public decision makers, private sector or civil society organizations, representatives of national or international media from across the continents. I would like to greet you all, and I hope that the media will underscore some of the positive and joyful sides of our continent. Africans exert themselves and make a lot of effort, which is not always visible in international and national media. So this request is made to the media to be more positive in your outlook and reporting. Clearly, we do have challenges given the global context, be it Russia's invasion of the Ukraine or the war in the Sudan, the war in Gaza with Israel, and etc. But Africa deserves some encouragement and some good news. So we trust you with that. So please underscore the positive news and the very good performance of the African Development Bank, and please continue to promote and encourage that. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the current annual meetings are holding against a global backdrop characterized by some major and complex challenges. The geopolitical conflicts that I mentioned a moment ago in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East, and in fact, I referred to the invasion of Russia by Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza and Israel, but these are clearly conflicts and should be named as such. The intensification of extreme climate events and tightening financial conditions, the dropping public finance or development public aid, as well as the trade wars, exacerbated trade wars since the beginning of the year, have created an unstable global environment where the very principles of multilateralism are being called into question. And in fact, as President Andeshina was stating, this has devastating impacts on fragile countries. All of these new events risk jeopardizing, fragilizing developing economies, the African economies, by further exacerbating inflation, the risk of debt overhang, as well as macroeconomic imbalances and social inequalities. So against this backdrop, global economic prospects are quite uncertain, and whereas those of Africa more specifically, the outlook for Africa remains clearly insufficient to meet the needs of the continent itself and its population. The issues of related to terrorism, to civil conflicts, greatly impact our continent, and strong demographic growth as well is a further challenge, although the growth rates that we are seeing in Africa from that perspective are slightly higher than those in developed countries. In reality, the slightly higher population growth in Africa is positive. According to the IMF, the global growth should, on average, be about 3.1% during 2026-2030. And in Africa, this growth should step up slightly, going from 3.3% in 2024 to 4% in 2026. This slight discrepancy, however, is absorbed by the demographic growth, meaning that the poverty continues to grow and to worsen in many African countries. We need, therefore, more efforts for this growth to deliver better living conditions for populations, for these to deliver transformation and root and branch transformation across our continent. We need massive improvements and investments in social dimensions, as well as the strategic leveraging of strategic levers, of which are human, natural capital, financial resources, and innovation. This is why I'd like to welcome and celebrate the overall theme of our annual meetings, which call us to make more of Africa's capital and to ensure that it works better for Africa's development. This is a genuine challenge. It's an opportunity as well to discuss the reforms and policies necessary in order to enable the human, natural, financial, and trade capital to genuinely contribute to the structural transformation of African economies. Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, I may not be as eloquent as my younger brother, President Adesina, but let me state that Africa has remarkable potential, driven by talented, youthful population, natural resources, abundant mining resources. It's very attractive to investment opportunities and very promising economic outlook. But given this potential, you may ask why such a slow socioeconomic transformation across the continent. This is very much a paradox. As I stated earlier, demographic growth is one of the constraints we face, but a better use of capital should free and enable better use of our capital and accelerate a transition to more inclusive, green, and resilient economies. President Chissano was saying earlier that as he flew over and was nearing Côte d'Ivoire, he was impressed to see all of the green coverage. But I wanted to say, in fact, and I'd like to congratulate my government and the Prime Minister, who's focused very much on tree planting. In fact, on a yearly basis, we have a day rather, and we have an objective focusing on planting a tree for every Ivorian. And so I continue to encourage Ivorians to do so regularly, because our forests, unfortunately, or most of our forests, some 80% of forests were destroyed in the period since independence to date. I'm also happy to note that the themes of our meeting cover some cross-cutting aspects, such as technological progress, which is a key driver for enhanced productivity and leveraging of capital. The experience of East Asian countries demonstrate that key driver of growth, competitiveness, and economic transformation stems from national technological capacity and growth. And I'm happy to see how interested our youth are in these sectors. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in support to our member states, the role of financial and development institutions is pivotal in ensuring implementation of integrated policies across the continent. Clearly, each one of our countries needs to improve and fine-tune the implementation of such reform policies. And I'd like to underscore the role of the bank in this particular regard, and I'd like to thank and congratulate the whole African Development Bank group team. Since its inception in 1964, the African Development Bank has profoundly transformed the social and economic realities in Africa. As President Adesina portrayed earlier, we can certainly commend all of these successive presidents, and particularly President Adesina, for all of these accomplishments. So the bar is set quite high for the incoming president, and we will be very eager to follow the progress to be made over the next 5 and 10 years, and to compare that performance to the bar set by President Adesina. Significant resources have been invested by and leveraged by the bank. Many accomplishments have been made across the continent in the areas of food security, industrialization, powering our countries, enhanced transport infrastructure, regional integration policies, as well as the overall improvement in living conditions for our populations. And I would like, in fact, to commend the commitment and the doggedness of Presidents Adesina as well as his predecessors. They have been able to place our institution at the very, or amongst some of the top institutions worldly. The bank's strategic drive dovetails perfectly with national and international development agendas, of which the United Nations 2030 agenda, as well as the African Union's 2063 agenda for Africa. And in this regard, Côte d'Ivoire, or in Côte d'Ivoire, the African Development Bank has been a key partner in mobilizing necessary resources and ensuring the success of our various national development plan. I would like to avail myself of this opportunity to recognize the quality of the cooperation between Côte d'Ivoire and the AFDB. We have seen substantial support, which has grown twofold in the past 10 years, and we'd like to thank the bank and thank you for focusing on what we have accomplished in the past few years together. Ladies and gentlemen, these annual meetings are convened to, or will be hosting the election of the incoming president of the African Development Bank. And the incoming president will continue the work and continue the vibrant work carried out under the helm of Adesina, and will ensure that the bank continues to play a premier role in the continent's advance towards inclusive social and economic development. I'm convinced that during the exchanges we will have during these annual meetings, my last page is a little bit, it's sticking. And yet I wrote this statement myself. I was up until 4 a.m. It is the last page. Very well. It is my last page.
Je voudrais, en fait, je pensais que
I thought my statement was as long as President Adesina's, but in any case, I am convinced, as I was saying, that the discussions we will have during these annual meetings will shed light on strategies and various measures able to accelerate Africa's development. You see, Adesina, these are, I seem to be quoting you here. So let me close by stating how proud we are to host the African Development Bank, and thank you once again. Thank you, dear President. Thank you to the boards of directors, of governors. Thank you very much to all of our guests for honoring us with your presence here. We are very grateful of your support. We will do everything we can to ensure that the bank continues to serve this continent. I'd like, therefore, to declare the annual meetings of the African Development Bank group open, and thank you once again, each one of you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands once more for the President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with that strong and inspiring opening address, we have come to the end of the opening ceremony and the beginning of the annual meetings. We will now transition to the high-level presidential dialogue making Africa's capital work better for Africa's development. And may I plead with you to please remain in the room. It will be a short one. Thank you very much.
Well, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished governors of the African Development Bank Group, heads of multilateral development finance institutions, development finance institutions, captains of industry, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to these opening ceremonies of the African Development Bank Group, right here in the beautiful and very vibrant city of Abidjan, in the equally beautiful country of Côte d'Ivoire, a capital city and a country whose economy and infrastructure is growing at the speed of light. No doubt, testimonies to the visionary and bold leadership of President Ouattara. Congratulations. My name is Victor Oladokun, and it's a pleasure and an honor to co-moderate this presidential dialogue session with my very dear colleague and friend, Marie-Angèle Touré.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Victor. Excellencies, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. Akwaba, which in Côte d'Ivoire means welcome. You often hear Akwaba when you take part in high-level events or upon arrival at the airport. Akwaba is not only a word, though. It's really a philosophy, and this hospitality is experienced on a daily basis. So, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, do you think that when Dr. Akinwumi Adesina came 10 years ago to settle here with his wife 10 years ago in Côte d'Ivoire, do you think that he had imagined at the time that he'd be standing here in front of thousands of people saying, I feel like an Ivorian? Well, that is the very spirit of Ivorian hospitality, and I think we can celebrate that. Let me turn to Victor.
Nigerian, how do you feel when you are in Côte d'Ivoire? Victor, you can tell us the truth, please.
Well, if President Adesina is a citizen of Côte d'Ivoire, the least I can be is an adopted, partially adopted Ivorian. But je suis à la maison.
I feel at home in Côte d'Ivoire.
Personne ne résiste.
No one can resist the charms of Ivorian hospitality. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a genuine honor and pleasure to be with you in this room where we can see a very well-filled room, a room in which we are charting the course for a more sovereign, more inclusive Africa.
Course of this session, the shifting winds of global trade and aid and economic challenges actually signify the importance of this 2025 annual meetings of the African Development Bank, and also brings into very, very sharp focus the theme of this presidential dialogue, making Africa's capital work for Africa's development. It underscores the need, no doubt, for strong institutions, strong economies, stronger private and public sector financing, stronger accountability, stronger transparency, and certainly much more innovative financial instruments with which to drive Africa's enormous and amazing potential.
Indeed, Victor. Mesdames et messieurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, over the next 45 minutes, it's our privilege to explore how various African nations are already leveraging the huge wealth within this continent, be it its natural, financial, or human capital, to ensure sustainable, innovative, and resilient growth, one that's focused on the future. We are looking at an Africa that's looking to the future. Before we come to the merit of our discussion, let me call on all of our guests, media representatives, all of you in this room. Please share this event on social media. Use hashtag AFDB AM2025 and invite your various communities to follow us live, to follow this session on YouTube. This is your dialogue as well.
Go ahead and let's get our session started. If you could start with the introductions and welcomes to the platform.
Bien évidemment.
Yes, of course. It's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome with all of the protocol due to them. We'd like to warmly welcome to the stage His Excellency Mr. Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros.
Mr. John Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana. As well as His Excellency Dr. Philip Isidore Mpango, Vice President, United Republic of Tanzania, representing Her Excellency Mrs. Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania.
Et enfin,
and I would also like to invite His Excellency Mr. Ali Mahama Lameen, Prime Minister of the Republic of Niger, to kindly join us on this panel.
Mesdames et messieurs, nous
Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, we will kickstart our high-level discussion. My first question is addressed to His Excellency Mr. Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros. Mr. President, the Comoros are blessed by nature, blessed with huge potential in the blue economy. We hear this very regularly at a time when island countries are seeking to leverage their maritime resources as drivers of growth. How is your government building on this source to build a sustainable, job-generating economy, one that's turned towards the future?
D'accord. Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam. At the outset, I would like to avail myself of this wonderful opportunity to congratulate and thank President Ouattara for all of the excellent arrangements that have been made. As is the custom, whenever we come to Côte d'Ivoire, we are wonderfully welcomed here. We also were very moved by the speech made by our brother Adeshina, as he said, 10 years at the helm of this institution. The performance of this institution, its standing at the international level speaks for itself. We'd like to thank him and tell him you have two graces to celebrate: the grace of God and the grace who stands by your side, and wherever you go, they will be with you, and you'll always be successful. To respond to your question, this is, of course, this is a crucially important question. We are an island country. We are faced with climate change. So we are an island country, but we are comprised of 4 islands, in fact, and therefore this puts us before major challenges. As you said, this is a country 2,000 square kilometers, land kilometers, but 150,000 square kilometers of sea, of maritime space. So this is a huge potential in terms of area. The challenge, however, is climate change, rising sea levels, piracy, illicit fishing, pollution. These are the many challenges we must face. But I can reassure you that the African Development Bank and President Adesina has been very supportive. And to respond to your question specifically, as you said, the blue economy requires, of course, the fisheries, fishery capacity that we have. Unfortunately, that's still undertapped. But we are focused on this. And then to date, we have been able to use some 30% of this resource through traditional fishery techniques, but we've worked with partners such as the bank who have been willing to finance us, to work in partnerships as well, in order to transform our fishing capacity to commercial grade. We have worked with, we have been able rather to train our fishers. We have been working with partners. We have sought out investors as well who have demonstrated their interest in supporting us. But as you know, we have fisheries and tourism as our key assets. This is very much our focus, madam. But of course, we need your support, your assistance, be it at multilateral level or bilateral level. Countries such as Côte d'Ivoire, with the experience you have, I think would be very useful. So once again, thank you very much. And our cooperation is long-standing. It's about 50 years old. We will continue to do more. And I'd like to thank you, madam.
Thank you very much, President Assoumani. And thank you very much again also for your passion, even as a leader. Our next question is going to come to President Mahama. Well, the big elephant in the room is the global shifts that are taking place geopolitically in the midst of growing trade uncertainties globally. What is Ghana doing to leverage the value of its tremendous commodities and natural resources? And how well is Ghana coping with the growing uncertainty right now?
Thank you very much. After the Second World War, we agreed that a multilateral rules-based trading system was a better way to go. And so a lot of work was done by the World Trade Organization, together with all our countries, to set up the rules for trade amongst ourselves. Unfortunately, that system is being appended, and countries have decided to impose tariffs based on their own interests. And so we've transitioned into a transactional world. It sends a signal to Africa that we need to pull ourselves out by our bootstraps, because there's not going to be a free dinner anywhere. And that means that we must, one, mobilize more revenue locally. And I mean, with the assistance of the African Development Bank, I think that we're doing quite fine. But domestically, we must mobilize revenue locally. We must add value to our products, and we must get a better share for the natural resource endowment that God has given us. And so I believe that is a signal to all of us to look inward and see how we can trade more amongst ourselves. Happily, we have the protocol on the African Continental Free Trade Area, which the majority of African nations have ratified. And so what it means is that we have the opportunity to be able to trade amongst ourselves. And I'm happy that the African Development Bank and other partners have focused on investing in the trade infrastructure amongst ourselves. It's not enough to just have a protocol on continental free trade. If you don't have the railways, you don't have the highways, you don't have the aviation connections to be able to exchange goods amongst yourselves, it amounts to naught. And that's why the investment in railways, in ports, in highways and others is very timely. And I think we must take advantage of that. In Ghana, we have expanded our port and it's become a hub for receiving some of the biggest ships into our port because we have a deep draft of almost 16 meters. And so once we receive containers bound for any country from Namibia, Angola, Cameroon, all the way to Dakar, we can redistribute. And that means that we can also distribute any products that we have to export to all these other ports. And so that's positioning ourselves to be able to trade more with our colleague African countries.
Thank you very much, President Mahama. But let's also talk about value addition. Everyone in this room likes chocolate. I believe everybody does. But what I do know, and what we do know, is that other than Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, the largest producers of chocolate in the world, both countries only occupy a very, very small portion of the finished goods in terms of cocoa. What is it that your country, in conjunction with Cote d'Ivoire, can do, for example, to increase the level at where you're operating in the value chain globally?
That's why sometimes you notice that the World Economic Order is rigged against Africa. We can increase processing overnight, but you have non-tariff barriers in exporting into some of the markets. Unless they bring a processor from outside, from Europe, who comes and sets up a processing plant and gets all the regulatory things in place. I mean, an indigenous person setting up a processing plant sometimes has a very big difficulty exporting finished products into the EU market and into the American market. But I must say that we've made progress from a low of about 25% processed cocoa. Ghana has risen to about 40%, and I know Cote d'Ivoire is ahead of us. Cote d'Ivoire has done 50%, which is comfortable. And so 50% of Cote d'Ivoire's cocoa is processed domestically. Ghana is at 40%. We hope that over the next 4 or 5 years, we'll reach the stage of Cote d'Ivoire at 50% and push even further.
Thank you very much, President Mahama. We'll go next to Vice President Mpango. Your country has invested tremendously in infrastructure in the last few years, particularly in the area of transport infrastructure. You're expanding regional connectivity and trade. How is Tanzania mobilizing capital to achieve these very, very ambitious dreams that President Samia Suluhu has? And what role is the African Development Bank playing in that regard? Huge dreams, huge ambitions. How are you dealing with that?
Well, thank you very much. First, I wish to thank the government and the people of Cote d'Ivoire for a very warm welcome. Indeed, we really feel at home. Thank you very much. Straight to your question, indeed for us, infrastructure is really critical for the radical economic transformation that we are pursuing. The challenge is, of course, that infrastructure is very expensive. And therefore, we have had to work very hard to mobilize financing to put up the railways. We are doing a standard gauge railway that will connect us to neighboring Burundi and DRC. We are also doing major roads that will connect us to our neighbors so that we are able to trade among ourselves. But for that to be done, we know very well that the terrain globally in terms of financing opportunities is not very good. The interest rates are very high in the capital market. And so we have had to, one, focus on how best we harness the private sector. How do we do that? We are deepening domestic capital markets So for example, we have issued the Samia infrastructure bond. We have done another bond to extend water in one of our local authorities in Tanga. We have done several green bonds, and this has helped us to mobilize financing internally. But not only that, we are also using pension fund resources to build bridges in Dar es Salaam and other towns, and we have found that quite helpful. But importantly also, we have put more energy in terms of improving our own tax administration, and particularly leveraging new technology. So we have electronic fiscal devices instead of relying on the human hand in collecting taxes. But we have also introduced a more efficient system of looking at the tax complaints from our taxpayers. So we introduced a tax ombudsman office in order that our taxpayers can raise grievances, if any, that they have against the tax authorities. But thirdly, I think very important, we have continued to mobilize external finance in terms of loans and grants. And here, the power of the African Development Bank has been extremely useful to us. We have used this leveraging power to mobilize finances for the standard gauge railway, for building our airports, for building our roads, and that way we have been doing quite well. But let me wind up with just one caution. In mobilizing external resources in particular, it is very important that we keep an eye on debt sustainability so that you avoid the risk of falling into the debt trap once again. So always keep an eye on ensuring that we don't go back to being a debt-distressed country. Thank you.
Very good cautionary words, Vice President Mpango. I just want to appeal to us in the hall. There seems to be a whole lot of noise in the back. Please, let's extend courtesies to the excellencies on the platform. Keep your voices down, and if you do need to speak, please go out of the hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor. On va parler d'un autre moyen de...
Let us talk about another way to boost economic growth. I'm going to share some figures with you concerning Niger. Niger's GDP growth should reach 7.4% in 2025, thanks to oil production estimated at 30 million barrels. These are impressive figures. Mr. Prime Minister, how does your government intend to ensure that oil revenue will be used effectively so as to boost sustainable economic development, which is truly sustainable, in a bid to reduce poverty in Niger? Thank you very much. Allow me to start by acknowledging the wonderful performances and achievements by President Adesina this last decade at the African Development Bank Group. He said, thanks to the boards that supported him and countries that supported him, he was able to achieve this. He also said this was possible thanks to his spouse, and I would like to extend my regards to her. Let me continue by noting that Niger's growth rate is quite important, and we should grant Niger the possibility to continue its exploration. Niger, with two other countries of the AES, are jointly facing terrorism. Yesterday we were hit by terrorists, and my thoughts go to the victims. It is quite unjust. We have huge potential, not just oil. We have uranium, which we seized from the hands of those who had been exploring it for about 60 years. We have solar energy. We are a big country and we have sun all year round. We also have coal, and it is the highest concentrated zone in West Africa, as well as other gas resources. To answer your question, the head of state of Niger, General Tiani, who has been at the helm of the state for the past 22 months, almost 23 months, has shown determination, and that is to explore and manage the natural resources in the best way possible, and by doing so with integrity. Back to the bank's president, beyond all of what had been mentioned, I would like to quickly remind us about the high fives. How to light up Africa. We have all of these resources which I've listed. How to feed Africa. 1 million, more than 1 million square kilometers, as well as rich soils. The AFDB is funding one of our major projects called the Kandaji project, and is going to produce power in Niger as well as farming areas so as to boost production in cereals for Niger. It's also going to help regenerate the ecosystem. On industrialization, for the last 22 months, we've tried to revive dormant industrial units so as to boost rice production. We've always noted in Niger that it's impossible to produce rice away from the river area, but we've been able to do so this year in the southern eastern zones in our country, and so it helps to cover the needs of people living in those zones or in those areas. The bank is funding the Trans-Saharan Highway, which cuts through Chad and gets to Niger. It's a major project. We have connectivity. And on human development, we took bold steps. You know, for us, oil needs to serve Niger first. And so the decision was to drop oil prices to ensure that it is accessible to all. We've taken measures on the health, regarding health, so as to provide health for the population, as well as education to be made available to youth. And so this is what I can say. We are working to ensure that growth is available for all. Thank you very much for sharing these initiatives with us. We see that these are not just dreams, but talking about costly living, efforts have been made to ensure sustainable development. We're talking about the wealth of Africa. President Assoumani, the diaspora of the Comoros is a strong economic force for your country. Remittances account for about 20% of the GDP in your country, in addition to, well, far beyond official development assistance. So what strategies are in place to ensure that these contributions from the diaspora are translated into concrete projects which are beneficial for the country? Thank you for this important question. You are right, madam. The diaspora of the Comoros represents about 50% of the population. Our population is approximately 800,000 inhabitants, and in the diaspora we have more than 350,000. And so it is a huge chunk of the entire population of the Comoros. We stand proud of our diaspora. Those living in France or elsewhere always think about their country. No matter how long they are away, they are full patriots at heart. Wherever they are, they think about their country. It is true. We had things in the past, but you've mentioned that we need to capitalize on these remittances, which stands above official development assistance. And it is approximately 320 million euros on a yearly basis. And so we need to draw benefits from this. So first, these remittances have ensured that we never face hunger issues. So famine crisis in the Comoros, thank God. And so our aim is to ensure that we have commodities for us to have consistent consumption, and so diaspora helps in this regard. This contributes to growing our economy. In addition, the diaspora of the Comoros needs to invest in the country to ensure that the country remains self-sufficient and to ensure that we are able to cater for our needs. In addition, our brothers and sisters in the diaspora living in France and who wish to visit the country or return to the country, they should be able to feel comfortable when they arrive and continue living. We know that at the moment we have extremism in these countries abroad, and so the diaspora might be tempted to return to the country. So we need to ensure that once they step foot in the country, they are able to feel comfortable back at home. As such, we have two challenges. First, with remittances, how do we ease transfer of finances? And so the Central Bank of the Comoros is working in this regard. I spoke with President Adesina how we can ensure that these money transfers are made easy and speedy, and for the funds not to remain stuck or lost in the air. And so we need to ensure that mechanisms are in place, and the most important mechanism is investment. How do we ensure that the diaspora transferring their money can proceed with investing in the country? We are a country where there are huge opportunities when talking about investments. Much is left to be done. We have road infrastructure. We have development as a whole. You have all spoken upstage here about transformation, and Africa has huge potential. Unfortunately, we proceed with crude exports and we gain nothing. However, we can process or transform on the spot. In 10 years, need I say 20 years, Africa will be the top market. Before exporting, we shall consume. And so we would have the capacity to consume, to transform, to export. Let us also encourage investors coming to our country because they have the capacity to invest. In addition, we should think about labor force. We could have investors coming in, and we should ensure that there are opportunities for everyone and we have qualified labor when people come to invest. In all African countries, it's important to note that we have a huge youth population, estimated at about 60% of the population. So the youths are there, and they can become our qualified labor force and make good progress. This is in the Sahel countries and all of our countries in Africa. We should ensure that these youths are not swayed away by terrorism. We should ensure that the money from the diaspora is put to good use, because our diaspora send their children to visit and live in the country. So it is important for them to feel safe when they come to the country. Among the flagship projects for the countries emergent by 2030, we have training and health. So we're focusing on training for the youth to gain skills and to be busy. As such, we are at peace. They can work during the day. In the evening, they get back to their homes, they're with their families, and the next day they go back to work. If they are not trained, then they can do this. We also have another issue with immigration. We don't talk much about this. If these youths are trained, they will stay at home. And so what I can say is we have a patriotic diaspora. We thank them immensely for what they are doing, but we need to also capitalize on remittances, again, which stands above official development assistance. However, we can spare the rod and spoil the child. Even if the diaspora gives us much money, we still make a plea to the AFDB to continue its financial support. Our bank, the AFDB, is the second major support, and we hope next year is going to go beyond the World Bank as our major partner. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
It's quite rare to find a president who is also the chief marketing officer of the nation. And we just want to thank you, President Assoumani, for your passion. And if you're an investor in the House today, after these annual meetings, if I were you, I'd be knocking on the door of the Comoros. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Our next question comes to President Mahama.
Bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Excellency.
You're welcome.
Next question is to President Mahama. Earlier, Vice President Mpango cautioned, and very wisely so, about the need for debt sustainability. And Ghana in particular seems to have done very well in restructuring its high levels of public debt. But since you've come into office, what specifically are you doing to return Ghana to a much more acceptable and sustainable debt path?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, it's history. Everybody knows now that Ghana defaulted on its debt. We engaged in a painful debt exchange program to restructure our debts and to bring debt to GDP to a range of about 55 to 58% by 2028. The debt restructuring was concluded early this year with our bilateral creditors, and therefore it brought, one, the quantum of debt down, that's the size, but it also stretched out the repayment of the debt. That brought us down to about 75, 76% debt to GDP. Since then, we're left with just 3% of the debt. We've covered 97%. It's left with the commercial creditors who hold just about 3% of the debt. And once we do that, then it means that the whole debt restructuring has been completed. But like I said when I spoke at first, I said we need to put any credit that we take or any debt that we take into the most productive parts of our economy in providing infrastructure so that you can have a rate of return on debt. You must do smart borrowing, taking debt where you can create debt escrows so that the income for which you invested the credit can go to repay. For instance, I mean, expressways that are tolled where the toll revenues are escrowed so that they go to pay the expressway in 25 years or so. I think that these are the kinds of things that we should do. There are many examples. For instance, we built a first-class port, and that, again, did not sit on our public debt. We made our Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority and their partners, Meridian Port Services, build the ports, which cost us about $1 billion, and that port is paying for itself, and that debt does not sit on our books. We built a new airport terminal we call Terminal 3, and again, we built it on the balance sheet of the Ghana Airports Company Limited. And so that project is paying for itself without sitting on our public debt. And so these are some of the innovative ideas that we need to introduce in order that our debts continue to be sustainable. But also increasingly, one of the push factors for the debt is the strength of the value of the local currency. Our debt continued to multiply because the cedi continued to grow weaker. And so you needed more cedis. Because our public debt is stated in cedis, the weaker the cedi becomes against the foreign currencies, the higher it pushes up your debt. Fortunately, I mean, some measures we put in place have recently begun to show results, and the cedi has been strengthening. And so we've reduced our total debt over the last 5 months by almost 150 billion cedis, which is very significant. And so if that trajectory continues, the target of reaching 55 to 58% debt sustainability by 2028 will be reached by the end of this year. And that means that it gives us fiscal space to begin to invest in the most productive sectors of the economy. But like I said, we need to look inward, boost domestic revenue, cut wasteful government expenditure, fight corruption, and introduce better accountability in governance. And that is what the focus of my administration is.
Thank you very much, President Mahama. Very, very well said. I'm going to pivot back to Vice President Mpango once again. Tanzania in particular has shown great ambition with its $12.9 billion energy compact to expand clean and inclusive energy access by 2030. And Tanzania was the host of the Mission 300 summit, which was highly successful just in January. How is your government positioning itself to lead regional energy integration?
Well, thank you. The first thing that we have done has been to make huge investments in the production of energy. So we embarked on a very ambitious project on one of our major rivers, and we have now finished construction of a hydropower plant, which now produces 2,115 megawatts. But aside that, we are investing in other projects, particularly to utilize our natural gas reserves, which are estimated at around 57 trillion cubic feet. And at the moment, actually, that's the main source of power. So we are diversifying our power sources also. But in addition, we have continued to invest in other hydro projects around the country. We are also doing a program to harness our potential in what do we call it now? Geothermal.
Yes.
We have a geothermal potential in several of our regions, and we have now started working on one which will produce about 500 megawatts. So that's on the production side. But we are also investing in the transmission so that we are able to hook into regional interpower connectors in order to be able to link up to neighboring Kenya, Zambia as well, Malawi. And this is very critical if we are positioned to position Tanzania to be able to be the main hub of power transmission. And
Mr. Vice President, if I could just ask, I mean, Mission 300 was a huge event put together by the African Development Bank, the World Bank, as well as with strong support from Tanzania. What has happened since then? What are the major gains that you've seen since then in this regard, particularly with regards to the ambitious plans that you do have? What are the significant things that have happened since January?
Well, since January, it's not a very long time.
I know.
But one, we have been able to lock in financial support, again, to ensure that we deal with the critical constraints which would allow us to be able to sell power to our neighbors, but also in case in some regions where we have not yet finalized the transmission infrastructure, we are able to connect, for example, to Ethiopian power. So it's not a very long time.
I know, but just as with other excellencies on the platform, I know you're all moving at the speed of light, and we wish you good success with this. I've gotten a signal that we're coming to the end of this session, so I think, Marie-Angèle, you have one last question for His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Niger, and then we'll come to a more general question to close out.
Mr. Prime Minister, in fact, I have a question for you. You talked about the high five, and you talked about Niger, about their assets. You said you have sunlight throughout the year. So sometimes our strength can be transformed into weaknesses. Talking about raw materials, but we don't have to wait for food self-sufficiency and be able to feed Nigerians. Let me talk about Niger food in partnership with group the Dangoken group. To what measures are you taking to ensure the success of this initiative, and how would this contribute to food security and economic progress in Niger? Food self-sufficiency in Niger. For about 20 months, we have an operation which is called Grande Irrigation. You have 8 regions in Niger, and each of them, the head of state have decided that they will deal with all the small water state. So it made it possible to come up with production, and this is the first time for 60 years that where we have not had any need to ask for assistance or to practice sales at lower prices, which means that initiative of the people of Niger is a reality in itself. The second important part about energy, Niger has made an effort to be part of the countries which will benefit from this M300 initiative. We are trying to use it as much as possible to reverse the trend. You know, before there was a power change in 2023, we were importing more than 70% of our energy products. At the point I'm talking, it's less than 30%, and when we are going to include the M300 initiative, we'll be able to cover all our needs. So this is a fundamental issue which will come and support agricultural production in Niger. Our ambition is not only that we should cover all our needs in 2-3 years, but we should be able to have a surplus that we can export. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Let me, before the last round, let me add something. You're talking about the African Development for the bank group. It supported and continued to support your countries. We are at a time when we are building the replenishment of the fund. I want to know how you are working with the country and what you can say to President Adesina showed the way. He ensured that the African continent, and in particular, it is a determination for all Pan-Africanists in how we mobilize resources domestically to be able to support what is doing a lot for our economies. The Niger decided to provide $1 million in that fund. 1 million, yeah. We'll do it and we hope that in a few years the African Development Fund would not need to be financed by non-African countries. We thank all those who are contributing now. We need their contribution. But let me look at the theme for this year, making Africa's capital work better for Africa's development. When we talk about this youth, when we talk about the population, it is a very important asset, and we have everything that we need. All we need to do is reorganize and we ensure that we have good management and good leadership, and that we should have peace. We should be allowed to manage our resources ourselves, and we will not need unnecessary presence on our continent. Thank you.
much appreciated. We're just coming to the close of this session in just a few moments, but I'd be very remiss if I didn't ask all of you, Your Excellencies, this last question, and I just want to give you probably about 2 minutes each to respond. This annual meetings, in particular, has a very special dimension as it marks, one, the election of a new president, and it also marks the end of a 10-year term, a remarkable 10 years of leadership by the president of the bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, a decade that saw him launch the high fives. I remember at the time a lot of people thought, well, what's the high five? But the brilliance of what he did was to simplify and synthesize complexity and make it something that was much more easily manageable. He's been known to be called Africa's optimist in chief. He doesn't see an obstacle that he thinks is impossible to overcome. And as leaders, each one of you have dealt with him and worked with him and vice versa over the years. What's your take on Dr. Adesina as you look back over his stewardship of the bank over the last 10 years? Just 2 minutes each. Just share your perspectives with us in this regard. We'll start with President Assoumani first, and then we'll go on in that order. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies.
I'm going to be brief because I know that aware. Is a brother, and during these 10 years, I came to power in 2016, but I did everything to assist him to ensure that the bank should be a reliable institution. So we did advocacy, did everything to ask them to, because the AFDB has a financing mechanism which is more accessible. So I continue to congratulate him. All our wishes and prayers is that whoever is replacing him should be able to take over and do even better. If he is still there to direct the person, to assist the person. I wonder why Mr. Adesina should not be an advisor behind the scenes to his successor. You should be a discreet advisor, because the AFDB is a source of pride to Africa, and what the bank is doing for Africa is more than all the other institutions. It's all in our interests that we should ensure that the bank has the financial and human means to be able to work for the benefit of Africa. Thank you.
President Mahama.
Let me call him Akin, because Akin and Grace have become quite close friends of Lordina and I, and so we are family friends. But I first noticed him when I was president, and President Goodluck Jonathan, my friend, was president of Nigeria. At the time, Akin was Minister of Agriculture, and he was transforming Nigeria's agriculture at a very accelerated pace. He had come out with digital solutions for distributing subsidies, fertilizers, and all that. And it was something Ghana was grappling with, and so I took a special interest in what he was doing to try and copy what he was doing in Ghana. And so in 2016, when the election for AFDB came up and he was the candidate, I became his chief campaigner. Something happened at the time. President Goodluck Jonathan had nominated him, and Ghana was strongly supporting him. And then government changed in Nigeria. And sometimes when government changes, in our part of the world, sometimes, this guy was part of the last government, so we don't support him. So I became his chief advocate to convince President Buhari that his choice was not that of Nigeria, it was a choice of all of us. And the rest is history. He won, and everybody can see that we made the right decision. I don't regret that we supported him strongly. And I think because of the background he had in agriculture, in many of our countries, some of the poorest people are farmers, and considering that he worked with farmers, he understood what poverty was all about. He understood that farmers needed power to irrigate their crops and so on and so forth. So he came to the bank with quite a lot of experience. And there's one thing I thank God for. His father sent him abroad to study medicine, and he decided to study agriculture. And Adesina is who he is because of his understanding of agriculture and how it is important for countries to feed themselves. So in all the documentaries that I saw, for me, the most important thing was moving that number of families out of hunger and increasing Africa's food production by 44 million tons. That's significant. And so we are happy with the work he's done. He's introduced the special agri processing zones, which we're about to start in Ghana. And the first thing any leader, any president owes his people is to make sure that you put food on the table and that they have enough food to eat. He set a very high standard. The bar is very high, and I'm hoping that whoever succeeds him will not only be able to attain the bar that he has set, but be able to push it beyond. And so thank you very much, Akin.
Thank you very much, President Mahama. Next, Vice President Mpango.
Well, when my brother, Dr. Adesina, came into office, Tanzania was getting support from AFDB to the tune of $1.6 billion. Currently, it has soared up to $3.54 billion. So thank you very much. Everywhere we go in Tanzania, we can literally name several projects by his name. I have come to understand that in Yoruba, Akwinumi is someone who spreads joy and happiness. And therefore, I really want to commend the Yoruba people because they were spot on in choosing his name. Because the names not only have a meaning, they actually shape a person. So I really want to say without prejudice, Adesina, that I have known since I was Minister of Finance and Governor of the AFDB board, is a true African son of the soil, very devoted to a bright Africa, where the sun of prosperity shines 24/7. We thank you very much for what you have done for the continent. We wish you and your family a prosperous life. I think you are too young to retire, and I hope Africa will continue to use you and depend on you. And finally, I just want to reveal that consultations are underway back in Tanzania so that we name one of the prominent roads in Dar es Salaam or Zanzibar or Dodoma in your name in appreciation of the immense contribution to the development of Tanzania for the past 10 years. We wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vice President Mpango, and congratulations, Dr. Adesina. Your Yoruba translation is actually perfect, Mr. Vice President. Akinwumi is certainly somebody who spreads joy around. But in addition to that, the word Akin means warrior. And one of the things that I believe has typified the life of Dr. Adesina is that for all of his career, he's been a warrior against poverty and injustice. So to that, we say a big amen to your wishes. We'll come last, but certainly not the least, to Prime Minister Lameen.
Monsieur le Premier Ministre.
Your Excellency, it's not the Prime Minister who will be talking, he's a former staff member. Permit me to talk as a former staff member. President Adesina met me here in Abidjan. We finalized the return of the African Development Bank from its temporary office in Tunis to the head office here. The person, Mr. Kabiriko, that he succeeded, that I would like to recognize. I was sent to Gabon soon after, and we needed to provide budget support to Gabon. At the board, many members were not for it. Mr. Adesina did the honor of calling on me, and he said, why are you defending the assistance of 500 million to Gabon? I told him that in its budgetary provisions, that country had put aside over $100 a barrel, and it had fallen that year to $29. So he said, I've understood everything, and he hung up, and he is the one who defended that budgetary support in Gabon. That's the first thing I remember about him. He sent me to Chad subsequently, where after a number of challenges, he asked me to act. President Deby called him to say, I thought that the person who you sent to act should remain here. He said, well and good, but he has a mission. First of all, he should follow up the completion of the bridge on Logon, and that the major infrastructure project of connection between Cameroon and Chad should be completed. Though that's a project that was supposed to produce energy, transport it, and distribute it. And there was also the issue of the budgetary assistance to Chad, and half of the members of the board were against it, saying that Chad had spent all its money on weapons. President Adesina called me. He said, explain to me, why should we support the budget? And I just simply told him that that country used over $1 billion to ensure its security, to ensure the security of the bordering corridors, Nigeria, Niger, and even Mali, Cameroon. And he said, I've understood you very well. He dropped the phone and he defended that these are things that cannot be forgotten.